It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. It starts with becoming friends with somebody who's really a complete stranger to your child. Step one, who are their friends on whatever sites they frequent? Going from public to private. That person doesn't want to post something that everybody can see. They just want to interact with your child. Direct contact. Photos, letters, gifts, viewing pictures that make your kid feel uncomfortable. Your kid has to trust those instincts. He's right, she's right, and they know it. Empower your kid to trust their instincts. Nobody has the right to make them feel uncomfortable. They try to build trust through manipulation and isolation. They try to slowly take that child away from you and get them to trust in them. That's Sandusky at Penn State University. It had nothing to do with the internet, but that's what he did to those kids. He gave them access to things they would never have access to in order to build their trust and take them away from their families and get them to trust in him in order to turn them into victims. Suggesting a face-to-face meet. I told your kids today, anybody that wants to be friends with them and they tell your child, don't tell anybody about our friendship. Our relationship is secret. It's just between us. That person is not your kid's friend. And eventually, let's meet in real life, what Dave showed us. There's a great book called Want to Go Private by Sarah Littman. If you want to understand the grooming process, it's written from the perspective of a 9th grade girl. Read this book. You'll understand how even a good kid, how even a smart kid can get caught up in this and be taken advantage of somebody. It's a work of fiction, but the character in that story doesn't even realize she's a victim. She thinks she's in love until she's rescued. It's a powerful story. The flip side is the pedophile's guide to love and pleasure. This guy was arrested in an undercover sting in Colorado. He was teaching people how to recognize confusion, how to read kids' posts, recognize how confused or how questioning they are, and how to meet them and turn them into victims. It's not everywhere, but it impacts every community. This man lived in Putnam County, New York, Carmel, New York. He met middle school kids. He friended them. He convinced them to send pictures. He then convinced them to send provocative pictures. He then told those kids, you sent me this picture. I'm going to show it to your parents, your coaches, your teachers, your friends, if you don't meet me in a car in a parking lot. He was arrested 2 years ago. He was sentenced last year to 35 years in prison. He deserves every day of it for what he did to those kids. You have to know who your kids' friends are, who they're talking to, what they're saying, and what's being said back to them. Who's most vulnerable? If your kid has ever been a victim of any kind of abuse, sadly, your kid is more likely to become a victim. You have to pay that much more attention. Kids with sexual curiosity. Every kid in every school I've ever walked into has some level of sexual curiosity. It can push us this way or it can push us that way. You have to be who your kid talks to when they're confused. Kids questioning their sexual orientation. Some of our sons are gay. Some of our daughters are lesbian. We have to be where they turn. We love these kids like nobody's ever going to love them. We have to be where they turn when they're questioning, trying to figure out who they are. That's what adolescence is figuring out who they are. When they turn to the internet to answer their questions, he's going to find them. Risk takers. You know your kid's personality. If your kid gets to the roof of this building and tells his friends, we can make it, and your kid jumps, your kid is a risk taker. Online or offline risk takers are more likely to become victimized. And lastly, kids who participate in more complex things online sometimes are more likely to be victimized. And I'm going to point my finger at Xbox and playing games with complete strangers on a regular basis online. I asked your kids to do 2 things, and you got to reinforce these 2 things. They got to pay attention to who logs on to play that game right after they log on. If 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 times out of 10, your kid logs on to play this game, and bloop, this stranger logs on to play the game as well. You need to point that out. We need to be aware of it. The second part of that is when that stranger starts asking your kid anything about anything other than the game. The only thing your kid has in common with that person is the game. When they start asking your son or your daughter, what's your favorite this, what do you like to do that, on a live chat or on a type message, that person is interested in your kid. It's the classic backdoor into young people's lives.